Hi, welcome to our Spanish food class. Today we're going to be making several very typical Spanish dishes. Paella and tortilla española or tortilla de patatas. The paella we're going to make today is a seafood paella where we're going to be using clams and mussels and shrimp and squid tubes, and of course the preparation takes a little time, but it's really not a difficult dish to make at all once you master the basics, or really once you are told the basics. So the other dishes are going to be a tortilla española or tortilla de patatas or tortilla de papas, as we say in Argentina, where I'm actually from and where I grew up eating tortilla de papas from a very early childhood, just about twice a week, maybe something like that. The third dish is going to be a mushroom dish that is also very typical in Spain. In Spain, they call mushrooms setas. Setas is a very typical preparation from that area of the world, and it's very versatile because you can actually replace the mushrooms for other things like shrimp, for example, or anything else that you might think of. So we're going to combine the mushrooms with garlic, parsley, lemon juice, and salt. So those four ingredients plus the mushrooms are really like something that is really, really delicious. If you do it carefully, it's better than the sum of its parts. The thing that's interesting about this is that we're going to use salt in two completely different ways in all the dishes we're making. So for the paella and for the tortilla, we're going to be sweating onions. For the paella, we're actually going to be sweating onions and red bell pepper. But for the mushrooms, we're not going to sweat anything. We're basically going to try to caramelize the mushrooms as soon as possible. And for this reason, we will not put any salt until the very, very end. So it's interesting, we use salt in different ways to achieve different effects, and we put it at different times during our cooking session so that we can achieve different results. This is not a complicated meal, but we want to actually do it in a pretty good order because there's many things in common with the different dishes. So we want to actually do all our prep before we actually even touch the stove or a pan or anything like that. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to cut our aromatics. Aromatics are going to be onions, garlic, and red bell pepper. We're going to use the onions in a couple of different ways. So I'm going to show you some techniques for that. And then after we're done with all of that, we'll move on to something else. So here's my garlic. Here's some more garlic. The first part of learning how to cut properly is to learn how to hold the knife. We hold the knife between our fingers, so my index is on one side, my thumb is on the other, and then my other fingers wrap around the handle. This way I have complete control of the knife. The knife is not going to twist one way or another, and I'm going to be able to cut without fear of hurting myself. The other thing to know about using a knife properly is that a knife almost never, or just about never, will go like this with a knife. It's not like this. It's always a slicing motion of some sort. So you want to use your knife either in the forward direction, or sometimes you cut backwards. When you're doing something with sushi, you cut like this. But it's always using the length of the knife. And the other movement that is very typical is this movement in which we have the knife never leaving the board. My other hand is touching the knife and it's just putting a little pressure, but not too much. It's just holding it in place, really. And so this is a cut that we do when we try to cut something very small, which is what we're going to do with mostly all of these ingredients. So the onions we're going to use in two different ways, and I'm going to get some bowls so we can put them away in the order that we need them. We're going to cut the onion for the salad that we're making, and we're also going to cut the onion for the paella and for the tortilla. I think I forgot to mention the salad. We're also making a very, very good salad. We will get to it towards the end of the class. We want to get started with the onion for the salad almost at the beginning of this class because we are going to be macerating in orange juice. The onion is essentially going to be raw, except we're going to get a little bit cooked with the orange juice and a little bit of salt. So this onion is actually going to be not so strong as a completely raw onion, but we want to do that early enough in the process. That way we give the onion a good enough chance to actually get softer. So the onion, we want to cut it vertically. That's the first cut that we make. We want to cut it vertically through the center essentially on the poles, so it's going to be from the North Pole to the South Pole, so to speak, not through the horizon, not through the diameter. We're going to do it like this. And we want to cut it in two halves, of course, and we want to make sure that the root ends up in both halves. So half of the root is going to be on each half that I'm cutting. And so I'm making a forward motion. So let's cut another one, and I'm going to go and get another one from my pantry. So this one is fine. So what I meant to say before, now we have that, the onion is not going anywhere. So here's another onion. Hopefully this one will be good. I'm going to show it to you one more time. The onion rolls like this, so it's dangerous. We don't do that kind of thing with an onion when it's not been cut in half. With the first thing that we do again is we cut it in half and we go through the root. And now I can put my onion flat on my board, so it's not going anywhere. So the next thing I want to do is I want to clean a little bit. I don't have to be crazy because I still have to peel this onion. So for peeling, what I do is again, I leave the root in place. I'm going to cut off the stem side on all of my pieces. So the root is this area that's kind of hairy. So I cut off the stem on all of my onion pieces. And again, as I mentioned, there's one part of the onion that we're going to cut differently than the others. Most of this onion is going to be diced. We're going to use one onion for the paella, one onion for the tortilla de patatas, and the other onion is going to be for the salad. So perhaps we should do the salad first. It's the easiest one to explain. Because we cut off the stem, the first part of the skin is exposed. So now it's easy to actually dig my finger in there and just remove everything. I'm going to be doing that with all of my pieces. I like in the kitchen to actually concentrate my tasks. So if I'm doing like peeling onions, I can do all of them at once. The exception to this, of course, is if we are doing something that's going to get bad when we get started, so then we need to do it very soon before we use it. For example, herbs, we wouldn't want to chop them too early in advance. We prefer to chop them right before we use them. And that's what we're going to do with the parsley for the mushroom dish. Okay, so here's the onion. And then I'm going to show you the two different techniques to cut the onion. One is going to be in slices, the other one we're dicing. So let's do the slicing first. That's going to be for the salad one more time. So I want to make sure everything is really nicely peeled and ready to go. And then the next task is going to be to accommodate my onions out of the way so I can actually clean my board. At this point, it is very important to clean because we're now dealing with ingredients that are going to be cut and they're going to be part of our food. So I don't want any of this dirt to actually end up in my food, and so that's why I clean at this point. So I clean everything, including my knife. Now I'm going to begin cutting the onion for the salad. We're going to put that one here. Actually, I don't want that there. I want to have it here so you can see what I'm doing. The root is in place in all of these onions. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to cut my onion, actually slice my onion just as thin as I can make it. We are going to macerate this in orange juice, so it's going to be milder than a raw onion. However, the onion will not be cooked except a little bit from the orange juice. And so I still want to make sure that I have a really thin piece for everybody. I don't want anybody to bite into like a chunky piece of onion when they're eating their salad. I'm almost sure that will not be a good experience. So there's a concept in cooking that's called fabricating your food. That means essentially it's a fancy word to say that we're going to cut our ingredients according to how they need to be used or what kind of response we're expecting from them. So in this case, we're fabricating our onion to be really, really thin. So again, I'm constantly clean. I'm gonna be using my fingers to guide my knife. my knife is going to be attached to my knuckles, and my hand, my opposite hand, is going to do the work of deciding where the cut is going to happen. This hand is done. This knife will be cutting my knuckles, and then my other hand will move and the knife will follow it. So I'm doing that again. So my hand is moving very little, and I'm giving myself a really nice area where I can actually cut my onions and slice them very thinly. So I don't think I need all that much onion. I'm gonna put the other one aside. This goes here. Again, this one is for the salad. It's not gonna be cooked except a little bit by the orange juice. That orange juice that we have in the macerating the onion will also be part of our dressing. That orange juice will be really nice because it's gonna acquire some of the taste of the onion. So here we're blending things from one ingredient to another. So I'm just squeezing that in there. Then I'm going to squeeze the other half. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of salt. So if you will, this is a little bit like a pico, like a very quick pickling. I'm gonna make sure I have as much orange juice. I like for that onion to be as submerged in orange juice as I can. This goes straight to the wash. I need to put a little bit of salt in here. I like using kosher salt, and I like using kosher salt from a specific brand, Morton's to be precise. Not because it's better than any other one, but it's because it's what I'm used to. So if I'm cooking with table salt, I know that I am not as familiar with the table salt as I am with this Morton kosher salt. And so I know that I need to be more careful. This one I know it, I've used it for years. I tried switching to diamond crystal ones. I couldn't do it because I couldn't get used to it. I had to do that because it wasn't available in my store, and so I bought the diamond crystals, and all of a sudden I was over salting everything. So it's not important, in my opinion, what salt you use. What's important is that you know what it does. And of course, table salt, if you look at the granules, is much smaller than kosher salt, and so it occupies much less volume, and it will salt a lot more for the same amount of volume. All right, so having said all that, I'm gonna show you now how to do the dicing of the onion. When we dice, we always begin by cutting things into strips, which is what I'm doing now. So I'm using the tip of my knife, hopefully this works. I'm cutting my onion all the way down to the board, but it's being held in place by the root. So just so that we get rid of the mystery of what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna be doing the dicing now. So then I turn my onion 90 degrees, and then I dice it, so it's a really easy way to dice. Now I'm going to do the other onions. I'm gonna do them a little more quickly. There's another method to do it in which you just slide your knife like this, and then my knife is touching my board, and so by touching my board, the geometry of the knife does not allow it to go further and cut down. So I cannot cut down, which is not what I want to do. I want to cut sideways, and I want to stop when the knife gets to the root. And so again, I have my onion cut all the way down. It's easy to manipulate, and I just go like this. And again, notice that my hand is always moving forward. It's never an up and down cut. So I can do either way. I've been doing a lot of classes. When I do classes, I don't show this method because it's hard to understand, hard to explain properly in the amount of time that I had in the class. So I just tell people to use the tip of our knife. So after doing that many times, I ended up getting used to doing it with the tip of the knife. But the truth is I prefer this second method I showed you, in which my knife goes like this. So it just goes like this. So you can go as quickly as you want to. I'm in no rush. So that's it for the onions. Again, half of this is going to be used for the paella, half of it is going to be used for the tortilla. What's missing here is that these onions are too big for both purposes. We're going to be using this other method in which the knife never leaves the board. The knife is essentially doing this. And so my other hand is there just for support. I'm not really putting any pressure. I want to cut these onions really, really small because these are what we call aromatics. Aromatics is any ingredient that you put in your food. Generally, it goes in at the beginning of the food. And generally, what we want from these ingredients is just for them to lend us their flavor, their aroma. That's what I call aromatics. And we don't want them to actually play any protagonist type of role in the food. And so that's why, again, that word, we fabricate them to be really, really small. The aromatics for the paella are going to be an onion and a red bell pepper, and then some garlic. And so we are going to cut the red bell pepper and the onion very, very small, so that it's going to be probably smaller than a grain of rice. So when we're eating the paella, we don't confuse it with a grain of rice. Also, cutting them very small will allow us to actually extract more flavor out of them. The first thing we're going to do with the aromatics, both for the paella and for the tortilla, is going to be to sweat them. We're going to sweat them. Sweat them is a technique in which we cook the vegetable at really low temperature. We add a little bit of salt, and the salt actually allows us to withdraw more moisture from inside the vegetable to the outside, and so this moisture will evaporate. Thus, that's why this technique is called sweating. It's similar to what happens to us when we sweat. When we sweat, we evaporate water. We actually evaporate water not to get more flavorful, but to actually to cool ourselves down. So it's called sweating. Like many, many things in cooking, a lot of these words come from things that happen in real life. So sweating, dicing is another word like that. The word dicing comes from dice, the one that you gamble with. And so it comes from real life. So sometimes it's easier to remember those things rather than just a culinary term. In the end, it doesn't really matter what these things are called. The important thing is that you do them properly. So we'll talk about sweating a little bit more when we get to actually doing it. I'll explain a little bit more, or perhaps again, how it is that we do it and why. All right, so those are my onions for all my food, the rest of the food I'm making today. Now I'm gonna do the red bell pepper. So the red bell pepper has seeds and it also has ribs. Those don't give anything of interest to us, so we just simply remove them. So to remove the seeds, we want to remove the seed pocket that always lives here under the stem side. And so for that, we're just going to again do a forward movement like so. This part has some red pieces that we may be able to use, but the important thing right now is that there is a seed pocket right here that we want to remove. We also want to remove the ribs, so for that, the best technique I know is to actually cut the bottom of the thing and then just run your knife like this. So now my pepper is open like a sheet of paper, and then I can actually go ahead and run my knife parallel to the board and to the bell pepper. And so that way I'm just removing this white part that really doesn't produce anything. It doesn't have any sweetness, any flavor that I care for, and the texture is uninteresting, so we just simply remove it from our food. The next thing we want to do, we're going to actually clean again. If there's any white pieces here, I can just use the tip of my knife to remove it. If I want to be really careful. It's not that these things are bad for you. They really aren't, it's just they are not good either, so we just don't want them in the food. So I'm gonna just do this to remove all the seeds from there, And then what we're gonna do with this, we're gonna also dice it. And I say also because this is gonna go with the onion. We're gonna dice it very small because it's part of the paella sofrito, part of the paella aromatic. And so again, we don't want it to be too big because we don't wanna have it be too present in our food. It's just a background flavor that we're expecting from this ingredient. So the technique here is to again cut things into strips. Notice I'm using the whole length of the knife. My knife doesn't stop after I'm done with the part of the vegetable. It just keeps going. That's better cutting technique. And then we again turn it around, and now we're gonna do that. I heard this described as a fulcrum cut, but to me it's just an anchor cut. There's an anchor, a place in the knife, a part of the knife that never leaves the board. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do that again. So I just noticed I made a mistake. I put all my onions in one bowl. What I wanna do is I wanna put half of them in a different bowl, but those are gonna go in the tortilla. But these ones, the ones I'm cutting right now, actually are gonna go into the paella. And they cook together at the same rate as the onion. So I am gonna put them in the same bowl. Then after that, I'm actually gonna cut garlic. I'm gonna mince garlic for the mushrooms and for the paella. I'm not gonna mix them with anything. They're gonna be by themselves in a little bowl, because when I cook them, I don't wanna cook them at the same time I cook the rest of the vegetables. They cook at different rates, so there is no reason to actually put them together in the same bowl. I wanna cook them a little later after the onions and the red bell pepper are done. So again, this one is gonna be for the paella. Actually, this one I could use as well. So this one I'm just gonna kind of wing it, just cut it really small, just by doing the fulcrum technique. So that goes into there. I see some parts that have not been cut, some parts that are fine. At this point, once again, I want to clean. My next step is gonna be to cut my garlic. I'm gonna mince my garlic right now. Right, so here we have the garlic. I have a technique for garlic I learned from the famous chef Jacques Pepin, in which we just take off the root of the garlic, different what we do with the onion. This garlic is not collaborating. So I'm gonna use probably 3 pieces of garlic for my paella. It all, of course, always depends on the size of your garlic, depends on how much you like garlic, a bunch of different factors come into deciding how much to put of anything. The most important one being you paying attention to what you're doing and making sure that you're achieving what you want. So let's clean again. So what I was saying about Jacques Pepin, he likes to chop off the root side, the knobby side. Once you do that, if you then just tap your garlic with your knife and crush it a little bit, that loosens the paper. And then I can just grab it from the stem and just the garlic just naturally comes off. So let's see if this one collaborated. No, I didn't do it well enough. So here we go. Check the pan. This one is not working today for me. Okay, so that's that. The paper goes into the composting. the garlic will get minced in short order. Actually, I want to mince more garlic because I'm going to use it again for the mushroom dish. So I'm going to actually do maybe 3 more cloves. The mushroom dish depends on having quite a bit of garlic. The paella doesn't really. Paella, the more I cook it, the less flavors I put. I get more confident in my ability to produce a really good paella without having to overwhelm it with flavors. When I started making, I was putting a ton of flavor to make sure people knew what the flavors were about. Now I want a little more balance in my food. Okay, so let's see. There's normal paper. Now we're just gonna simply do the fulcrum cut. Cutting garlic was one of the first things I did in a kitchen. I was 17 years old and I was going to a spiritual group. It was a time in which everybody thought that garlic was the best thing for your health, and so people were eating copious amount of that. And as part of my service to a Mahatma that was visiting us, they put me to cut a whole pile of garlic. And I love the technique. I love the idea of like you go like this with your hands, with a knife. You start with something that looks like garlic, and you end up with something that looks like minced garlic like this. And there's something soothing to this thing, to go on like this. There's something you have to be in the moment to do it. So I really fell in love with cooking sort of at that point. Okay, let's see how I'm gonna do this. It's small, so I'm just gonna put it like so. And then I will have my garlic ready to go for when I need it. All right, so we have the potatoes, the onions for the potato tortilla, aromatics for the paella, garlic for the mushroom dish, and garlic for the paella. Now we need to deal with a couple other things. The first thing is I'm gonna clean. So the next thing we wanna take care of is the tomatoes. There's a couple of ways you can go about this. Today I'm gonna be using the more traditional one, which is to cut a tomato in half. And then we're going to use a cheese box grater, the coarse side of the cheese box grater, to get rid of the skin and also to get the tomato into a pulp. We want this to be a pulp. The other method I use sometimes, and it's mostly what I do with my online classes, is to actually have people buy a can of nice quality San Marzano tomatoes, the ones that come from Italy, and actually just blend them and use that. So because we only use 2 tablespoons of that sauce per person, they feel it's wasteful, and so this might actually be a better thing. The problem is I can't assume that anybody has any equipment at home, not even a cheese box grater. So anyways, that's what my tomato sauce is like. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. So I'm starting to put all my ingredients right there to make sure that when I start to cook the paella, everything's gonna be in its place. It's what we call the mise en place. The order in which we're gonna be cooking these ingredients we're gonna begin by sweating the onions and the red bell pepper, then we're gonna cook the garlic, then we're gonna put the tomato sauce, and then we're gonna put the rice. So the next thing I wanna talk to you about now is paella rice. So this is paella rice. It's a short grain rice. It looks a lot like Japanese rice or like arborio rice, but the truth is it behaves quite differently. To me, paella needs to be al dente. And so I don't want a rice that will release a lot of starch. In a pinch, you could get away with using arborio rice. I doubt very much you'd be able to use Japanese rice, for example, the rice that we use for sushi, but everything is possible. So in a pinch, if you really want to eat paella and that's all you have, don't let that stop you from making a paella. I think people get too hung up on having just the right ingredient that's talked about in a recipe. When you actually become a little more confident in your cooking, you can actually improvise much more. And so as long as you know what's happening, as long as you know what you're doing is going to be okay, or what you can do to prevent it from being really bad, the important thing is to really understand what's happening to your food. So I'm going to talk a little about how the paella develops, and we'll do that as we get closer to making it together. So for what I want to say right now is I want to say how much rice we're going to be using. This is important because we are going to be making enough paella for 3 people today. So for that, you have to have a specific amount of rice. I like to have 1/3 of a cup of rice per person. And so what that means is that my pan needs to be the appropriate size. So for example, today I'm going to be making about 1 cup of rice. That's for 3 people. It's a little bit over a 3-person paella. For that, I'm going to be using a pan that is about 12 inches or so. For this, I do need to use a paella pan. I mean, there are 12-inch skillets, but for this one, I probably just be using my paella pan. The important thing when I put my rice in there, it should not be much more than just 1 layer of rice, which is what this one is. Right? So that's what I need, about a cup of rice to use a paella this size. If I'm gonna be making a paella for, let's say, 5 to 8 people, all of a sudden my paella is this size, because now, let's say I'm doing it for 8 people, I need to put 2.5 or so cups of rice, so that's gonna spread evenly here. I could make a paella for just 1 person using a paella like this, and in this case, because this is a smaller pan, I can actually use a non-paella pan as long as it's flat and as long as it can respond quickly to changes in heat. I'm not gonna bore you with the rest. I have, of course, a paella pan for 15 people. I have a paella pan for 28 people and some sizes in between. When I do events, I wanna make sure my rice comes out just the right way. Why do we want to have the rice spread flat in the paella? There's a thing in the paella that when you make a really good paella, when you master it a little bit more, you can try to always get. That thing is called the socarrat. Socarrat is this crunchy part that you want to get at the bottom of the paella when the paella is done cooking. And I'm going to show you my procedure to achieve that every single time. But what I wanted to talk about now was the kind of pan that we want to use. I have a pan here that is about 12 inches. That will accommodate about a cup of rice in my pan. Now I just did this for demonstration purposes. I'm gonna put this rice away, and then very soon we're gonna start cooking. Before we do, I wanna actually prep all the rest of the ingredients for this meal that we're making. We're gonna actually prepare all the potatoes and put them in water. We put them in water so that they don't oxidize. So now we're gonna deal with some of the seafood. We're gonna begin by peeling some shrimp, and then we're gonna cut the squid tubes. So I'll show you how to do that. We also wanna clean the shrimp. The shrimp very often has an intestine that is very prominent. You don't wanna eat that, so I'll show you how to remove that. So I have here 5 shrimp. I actually have 1 squid that I'm gonna use tomorrow. So I don't wanna cut it today, but I'm gonna cut just 1 of them. Anyhow, so here is the shrimp. Sometimes I use the shrimp shells to make a very quick stock. Depends on what I'm in the mood for. Sometimes I use just simply chicken stock, which I really like, because the chicken stock is made in-house, and then it's a very thick and rich chicken stock that actually helps flavor the paella. Also helps with that socarrat that I was talking about before. So anyways, I'm putting the shrimp there. We're gonna put it back in the fridge as soon as we're done, except I'm gonna also look for that, what we call the vein, but it's really not a vein, it's an intestine. So you can imagine we don't really wanna eat that, particularly if it's really large. Sometimes medium to large shrimp have a very prominent one, which we really want to remove. A small one, usually if it's there, first of all, it's pretty difficult to take away, to take off. And secondly, it's not that much of a problem as a really big one in one of these ones. I'll show you to see, these ones don't seem any of them to actually have much of that. So it's not a problem, but we'll take a look. Again, so I always start in the bottom part, which is easy to take apart. And then I just remove all the shell. You could also serve this with a shell. In Spain, very often they serve you a whole langostino, which is like a really large shrimp or a very small lobster, however you want to look at it. And it's served with the antenna, with the eyes, with everything. This country go for that. But so one more thing is that the tail, we want to sometimes leave it, sometimes not. Since we're making a stock, I want to put as much in that stock as I can, so I'm going to put all this shell in there. So the next thing I do, I'm going to put my shrimp back in the refrigerator, but I'm going to actually begin my stock just by adding water to it. We'll talk in a few minutes about how much stock we're going to need. So I'll show you in a second how the stock is progressing. For now, I just want to wash my hands really quickly and put the shrimp back in the fridge so it doesn't get bad. The squids, we want to cut into pieces that are about, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, something like that. It really depends on how thick the squid is. This happens to be particularly thick. As I mentioned, we're also going to be putting clams and mussels in this paella. So here we go. I'm going to show you how to use them. When you bring them back from the store, you want to put them directly on ice, like this. So there's ice there, but the ice is filtering down, so the mussels will not be in touch with that water. When the ice melts, we don't want the mussels to be drowned by the water, which will happen. Also, before we use the mussels, we want to make sure that they're alive. So if they're closed like this, that means they're alive. If they are open, I don't have any ones here that are open too much. This one doesn't look very promising. I just bought it today. In the summer, mussels are really difficult. Like these ones they were really alive a little while ago, and now they don't seem to be. So some of them are. So what I'm doing is I'm just pressing down like this. If they don't close, it's very possible that they're not alive. By being alive, if we press them like this, they will actually react to our pressure and they will close. This one is kind of doubtful. This one I know is perfect because it's completely closed. So this one is also kind of doubtful. So I'm just expecting them all. I'm gonna put them back in the ice. I'm gonna put them back in the fridge as soon as I can. The clams also don't look very good. You need to be able to close them when you go like this. If you see this one is starting to do that, this one seems to me like it's not alive either. That one I'm not sure about. This one is completely okay. This one, not really. None of these are really good, so I'm not going to be able to use many of them. This one seems fine, this one too, this one too, this one too. So a lot of them are okay. So what I do with this, I want to like rinse them and put them back on ice. Put them back in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. So I'm just going to put them in a colander and I'm going to rinse them. I don't really need to do too much more than that. I'm just trying to get rid of the sand that would be on the exterior of the shell. So I'm doing all that, and I'm gonna go and rinse them. So here we have the shrimp shells that we got from our shrimp when we peeled it. All I did was just put some water in there. I'll tell you later on how much water we're gonna need for this paella. At the moment, I just probably have there about a quart and a half or so. So what I'm gonna do, just turn on the fire, and actually now that you've seen this, I'm going to move it over to a different burner And here I'm gonna start making the paella. I'm gonna turn off this fire for now. So again, I'm gonna be making a paella for 3 people today. That means I'm gonna put a little bit less than a cup of rice. We're gonna begin actually by putting olive oil in here. I like to do that even before my pan is hot. How much olive oil? You need quite a bit of olive oil. You need enough olive oil to be absorbed by the vegetables, and also it needs to help us fry the socarrat in the bottom of the paella when we are ready for that. So we need a lot of olive oil. Perhaps that's too much. Okay, so to sweat the vegetables, we want the fire to be very low. I'm putting this as slow as it can go. Then I'm putting my onions and my red bell pepper in there. This was the wash. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to put a little bit of salt. In this case, it's really just a little pinch of salt. But this is only because by a process called osmosis, the salt releases water from inside of the vegetable cells, and then it comes to the surface, and then it can evaporate when it gets in touch with the heat. So again, my heat here is really, really low. I want this to be a very gentle process. If you notice, if you can see this, I hope you can, there's very little bubbling going on. Whenever you see bubbling in a thing that you're cooking, that means there's water that's evaporating from inside. We want this to be very gentle. So we don't want to burn it. We don't want to burn our vegetables. And also, a gentle process does not change the flavor of the vegetable as much as it would if we were doing it at really high temperature, in which case our vegetable will actually caramelize and begin to produce other flavor compounds, sugars and stuff like that. That's why it's called caramelize. So we are gonna do this for a little while. It's a really important part of cooking to learn how to sweat your vegetables properly. In general, we just sweat the aromatics. The aromatics could be what the French call the mirepoix as well. When you're adding carrots and celery as other aromatics to your food, we usually sweat those even when we make a soup or whatever. We really take good care of these things. And just to recap, I put some salt. The idea here is that the water that's inside the vegetables will evaporate. The vegetables will get more concentrated flavor. The reason for that is because it's just like in a chemical compound. If you evaporate water, the solution will get more concentrated. Here the same thing is happening. It's getting more concentrated, all the interesting things in the flavor of these vegetables. So there we are. It's a little hard. I want it to be very, very low. That's a little too low, but anyways, that's about the kind of like bubbling that I want to see. I'm gonna remove some of the things I didn't cut so well. So you see the vegetables are also getting shiny, kind of translucent, softer. It's a good indication that they are very close to being done. The vegetables also get softer, I should mention, because what's happening is with the heat and with the water that's evaporating, the cellulose walls of the cells are actually getting softer, and that's what makes our vegetables softer, easier for us to eat. So I'm gonna say this is almost done. I want less fire there. So I'm gonna actually, they're gonna keep cooking a little bit more, but now I wanna introduce my garlic. So what I do, So I push everything to the sides, and then I'm gonna cook my garlic right there in the center. So I'm just gonna use half of the garlic that we cut earlier. The other half is gonna be used for the mushroom dish. So the garlic should not cook for too long, really literally only 5, 10, 20 seconds until I can smell the garlic, which I can already do. So now I mix it with the rest of my ingredients. Now the other ingredients are actually protecting the garlic because they are still evaporating some water. And of course the water does not allow the temperature in our system to go above 210 degrees before it evaporates. So the vegetables are protecting the garlic. The garlic is starting to give us that wonderful aroma. In goes now my tomato sauce right there in the middle. So I want to not put the water just behind and try to avoid using as much of the water as I can. So it's just one tomato, the rest of what I want here, I want really high heat. I want this tomato sauce to actually evaporate most of its water and really kind of caramelize. So in this case, I am caramelizing. Depending on how much water your tomato had to begin with, that may take longer or shorter. But the point here is that the vegetables are going to tend to keep falling into the center where all the oil is. I'm constantly moving them out of the way so they don't burn, because I really want this tomato to be completely a paste. When I do this with tomato cans, this happens much faster. But this tomato today had a lot of water in it, so it's going to take a little while to actually get to that point. Meanwhile, I'm going to check my cameras. So this is a point in which we really cannot walk away from the paella because we can easily burn everything. So at this point, I would advise you to stay with your paella. It's a very user-friendly dish because everything that we are doing now, including adding the rice, can be done way in advance. You could do it the night before and it will still be okay. So all you need to do is you make all this part until we put the rice in. This is what we call the sofrito. You can make a sofrito the day before, the morning, an hour earlier, whatever. The point is that it can be done much earlier. So you can actually enjoy when your guests come over. All your task at that point will be to cook the rice with the liquid. My stock is done, so I'm turning it off. All right, so here's my tomato. It's getting thicker. I want it thicker still, and I want it to be a little more toasted. So I'm gonna crank up the heat as far as it will go. So the next step will be for us to put in the rice and toast it a little bit. So there's a lot of oil in here. You see how my tomato is much smaller than it was before. It's actually kind of getting cooked and turning into a really nice sauce. All right, so let's say that's done. Here goes my whole cup of rice, paella rice. This can go to the sink. And now I want to lower the heat and I want to mix my rice with all my ingredients and toast the rice a little bit as well. There's all that oil in there. So the rice will toast with all that oil. And this is brief. I don't want this to be there for too long. I don't want the rice to burn. I don't want my other ingredients to burn. So this is low, medium, low heat, something like that. All right, so that's about that. Let's go a little longer, maybe. So my paella is progressing nicely. All right, let's put a little higher heat to toast. I want to hear a little crackling, just a little bit. Yeah, I want to see that the paella is getting stuck a little bit to the bottom, just a little bit. And not too much. So I think that's that. I'm turning off my paella. I'm gonna set this burner aside so I can show you what we're gonna do with the stock. So now we have the shrimp stock that we created, and what we want to do is we want to measure it, and we also want to remove the shells. So we're gonna measure double. Oh, it's hot. We're gonna measure double the amount of liquid as we had rice. So double in volume, not in weight. If I put 1 cup of rice, we need 2 cups of water, which is what I have right there. Let's make sure of that. A little more, so this one I will save. Now what I want to do, and this is different, I do this differently than a lot of other people I know. I like to actually flavor my stock, because if I flavor my stock, I have a chance to actually taste it. Some people put the spices straight into the stock, and then you cannot taste it. You don't know what you're putting, you're just working by memory. I'm bringing here all the things that we're gonna need. We're gonna begin by putting about half teaspoon of onion powder. I measure that with my hand just like that. That's probably too much. I don't wanna overwhelm the paella, so something like that. It's pretty powerful. As I mentioned before, I don't want to overwhelm my paella anymore. Garlic powder goes next. About the same amount. Really importantly, paprika. Half a teaspoon of that. Then I have saffron. Saffron needs to come to you in threads or in filaments. Like this, it shouldn't be a powder. How much saffron? I'm gonna put a pinch like this. That should be enough. I'm gonna try to break it into the stock. As soon as I put the saffron in there, the stock turns yellow and it smells differently. So, if you taste this now, it's gonna taste really, really bland, because there's no salt in it, so it tastes really bland. But as soon as I put a little bit of salt, I put what? A pinch in there, we're gonna see how it progresses. I like to actually salt gradually. That's better, nowhere where it needs to be. Some more salt. Some more salt still, not too much more. We're getting to the point in which is on the verge of being ready. I really don't want to oversalt this, but it shouldn't taste bland either. It's very good. Just let's put a couple of more, just a couple of more. Now my stock is ready. I'm gonna put it aside. I'm gonna clean, and we're gonna begin to cook the paella. This is the part you do once your guests arrive. You will be eating probably about 40 minutes from now. Something like that. That's how long it takes. Okay. So I have my stock ready. I also want to have my seafood with me at this point because it's going to go in very short order. The shrimp and the squid will actually not go in for quite a while, about 20 minutes from now. But I want to have it here because I want to be ready. Okay, so my stock is actually hot. I'm going to turn on my fire at pretty high. And I'm going to put all my stock in there. Once again, the amount is double in terms of volume that the rice. Because what I mean by in terms of volume, we're not actually weighing the stock and putting double, we're actually giving the amount, the double amount. So 1 cup rice, 2 cups of liquid. My very first time when I put it into a paella, let me just rephrase this. When I first put the liquid in the paella, I want it to boil at a really high clip for about 1 minute. And when it does, I'm gonna begin putting my clams. So the first thing I do is I distribute my rice really nicely in the paella, make sure that it's flat and even. And then I'm gonna grab my spoon and I'm gonna put it away because we're not gonna use it anymore. If we need to look to see what's happening in the paella, we're actually gonna use a little spoon, but we're not gonna use it to stir. There's no stirring in the paella. I feel like somehow in the back of my mind, I feel like I'm talking like a character out of Seinfeld, but there's no stirring in the paella. An episode could have been named like that, I suppose, I don't know. Anyways, you see how it's boiling really hard? It's not completely even, so my trick for that, not just my trick, but everybody's trick, is that we move the pan around to achieve more even heating. Then, while it's still boiling, I want to put my clams in there. I'm going to put about 2 to 3 clams per person. So 1, 2, we said this was going to be for 3 people, so we're going to put 6 clams in here. 3, 4, oops, 5, and 6. I'm actually going to move them a little bit before the rice starts setting, because I want to put them in a nice decorative pattern. And when I put them in, I like to put them with the hinge side down. This one is not collaborating. Let's do on this one. So what happened here is that the clams are gonna actually die as they get cooked. And when they do, they're gonna open. And when they open, I want them to open towards us. Let's just do this with 2 spoons. So again, what I mentioned before is that I want this first cooking to be really high. My clams are already starting to die. I want to turn down my heat because the rest of the way, this is going to be a simmer. So I want to turn it down even more. And then when I do turn it down, I'm going to put in the mussels. The mussels are going to be about 2 to 3 per person. I like to use the flat side of the mussel. This is the flat side, this would be the curved side. I'm not sure exactly what the best way to show it. This is the flat side, this is the curved side. I like to put them hinge side in. So again, when they open, I want them to open towards us. Because the paella is a festive dish. It should be decorative. It should reflect that you spend some time thinking about it, making it as nice as you can for the people eating with you. So there's one roll here. I'm going to push it up again. And I'm going to turn down my heat even more. I'm going to put a couple more mussels in there. My shrimp will wait. My shrimp will wait until the rice is more close to being done. This is going back into the fridge because I need it for tomorrow. So the struggle here now is to control the fire so the paella is not going too high. This is going to take probably 10 minutes before I can put the shrimp in place. I'm going to have it right here next to me. You can see how the rice is getting plumper already. You can see how some of my clams have opened, some haven't. It's possible that some of them were not too good to begin with. Truth is, in the middle of summer, clams and mussels are not at their optimal. They like the cold. So I'm gonna keep reducing my heat. So there's something that happens also, and it is that as water evaporates, the same amount of heat will produce a much higher effect. And so as the water evaporates, we're gonna have to continually keep decreasing the heat in the paella. So I can see that my rice is getting plumper, an indication that it's getting ready. It's still not quite there. I want it to be soft on the outside. The inside should be crunchy but not completely uncooked. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to test my paella again. And if I consider the rice to be very close to being done, I'm going to put in my shrimp. Again, the struggle here is to keep the fire low enough so it doesn't actually evaporate too much water. So maybe now it's a good time to talk about that. There's an equation between how much water you put in, how much evaporates, and how much cooks, how much gets absorbed by the rice. So if you put too much fire on your paella, too much of the water is going to evaporate and the rice is going to end up being crunchy. And if you put too little fire, then not enough is going to evaporate and the rice is going to end up absorbing too much water. It's going to take too long to cook, and then your rice is going to end up being very mushy. You don't want either. You want the rice to be al dente. And so the idea is that after you make this once or twice or something like that, then you'll be able to judge how much fire you need on your paella. There's nothing wrong with actually adding a little bit of liquid here and there. Just by looking at my rice, I know it's not gonna need that. I can look at my rice, I'm gonna put it in my mouth. It's still super crunchy. No, I'm gonna just wait a little longer before I put my shrimp in. And I'm gonna be moving my pan around. Notice that not all the clams open at the same rate. The mussels seem to have done okay. So while we keep looking at this for the next 5 minutes or so, I can tell you what's going to happen with the rest of the meal. I'm doing this backwards, actually, because the sun comes in the afternoon. I want to make sure I get the paella out of the way. So we're going to be cooking the mushrooms. The mushrooms, we're going to cut them in half, and then we're going to kind of fry them at really high heat. And then we're going to add some lemon juice and some parsley. It's a very quick dish. So we can actually do that one while the paella is resting. We're going to rest the paella for about 5 to 10 minutes before we actually are ready to eat it. The potato tortilla is more complicated, so that's going to take a little longer. We're going to spend another hour. It could actually be the subject for another video altogether, but we're going to put everything together today so you guys can see a lot of Spanish food today. Look at my rice now. If you look at it, it's really plump. I'm almost sure it's going to be soft on the outside, crunchy on the inside. It's exactly like that. It's still not fully cooked. Time to put my shrimp in. I'm going to put my shrimp on the periphery. Actually, I'm going to reaccommodate it a little bit so it's really peripheral. The shrimp is going to cook on one side, and then I'm going to turn it, flip it actually, and cook it on the other side. Let's put it here. And when I flip the shrimp, I will put in my squid. I also have sweet peas that are not cooked. I want them to be there now. So I want them to cook, and while there's still some heat, some water in the paella. They don't take long to cook, but sometimes they're really dry. They may take a little longer. So I'm not too afraid of them overcooking. The shrimp should be buried in there. Can people overcook their shrimp all the time? I don't want to do that with mine, so I turn it around. It's really pink, so it's really well cooked. That one is not so much, but it's still gonna finish. I like it that it's really warm, kind of hot actually, so that I know that the heat has affected it. Now, because this squid is pretty large, I'm gonna actually put it earlier than I normally would. What I meant by large, I meant to say it's really thick. So it's gonna take longer than the small ones that I usually deal with. The squid also cooks really quickly. Wash my hands after touching seafood. And now it's a matter of letting the rice finish cooking. I'm gonna keep testing it. It's very al dente, which I actually really like. We still haven't created the socarrat. I want the rice to absorb a little more water, and then we're gonna crank up the heat really high, and then evaporate all the water that's residual in there, all the water that's left. And then we're gonna create a little nice, crusty, crunchy part on the bottom of the paella. At this point, I'd like to inspect to see how much water there is left. There's still a bit of water, and I think my rice is almost done. So I'm cranking up my heat really high now. And now I really need to pay attention to this. I can't walk away. Now it's really important that I stay with my paella because I don't want to burn it. As soon as I smell something burned, I'm going to turn it off. Prefer to have no socarrat than having burnt paella. What I do like to do is I like to actually come and scrape the bottom to see how much of a socarrat is forming. In case you didn't catch it the first time, the socarrat is a crunchy part at the bottom of the paella that is so beloved by everybody. I think we did okay with most of these plums. I'm gonna put this higher. The highest you can go actually at this point, but always using your nose to make sure that you are not burning it. You see how the squid now is not floppy anymore? That means it's cooked. This one's a little floppy, so I think that area needs a little more cooking. I'm gonna go towards that area. You hear that? I don't know if you can hear that for my microphone. It sounds like the pitter pattern of rain hitting the pavement. That's the sound I want. I want the sound of caramelization, the sound of browning. Not there yet, so the red is not there, but the center probably has it. Yeah, I can scrape the center. I wanna really concentrate the heat on different areas. That's why I'm putting the pan to the side like this. I can really hear something going on down there. That's what I want. You can see all this steam coming up. It's finishing cooking everything. Drying up the rice a little bit. Let's see how we're doing with the socarrat. I think I'm gonna be shy with it, so I'm gonna leave it there longer. Children of all ages are said to fight over the socarrat when there is little in the paella. It's the best part of the paella. Starting to smell a little burnt, so we're going to the next step here. I see a lot of bubbling everywhere. That's exactly what I want. The steam coming out. I'm just really heating up this area. Oops, I think I'm burning something. More socarrat, please. I'm gonna just do a little inspecting now. Yeah, I don't have enough socarrat in there. It has some in there. I have some in there. I have some in there, but not enough. So we're gonna do the borders now a little more heavily. Make sure it doesn't fall. As long as I hear that pitter pattern of rain, I know it's not gonna burn. That's happening because there's still evaporation of water. As soon as I don't hear that anymore, I know that area has given me all it has to give. Nothing prevents me from looking at it again. Again, I'm a little afraid of burning it, so I'm gonna move it to the next place. I can hear and I can see a lot of oil bubbling in there. That's not water any longer. That's my oil really keeping up. This is all nice oil. That's full of socarrat in there. Don't want to be shy with it, so I'm just going to keep cooking it a little bit longer. Maybe a minute longer or so. I shut off the fire. The next step, we're going to cover the pan with aluminum foil. Why aluminum foil and not a cover? It's because paella pans don't come with a cover that I know of. Especially the large ones, and so aluminum foil I always have with me. so I don't have to worry about having a pan cover. So let's put this aside and wait for the paella to be rested. So it's nice to actually serve one lemon wedge per person and instruct them to actually squeeze it on their paella as they are gonna eat it. Just a little bit, it doesn't need much. We're not trying to make it lemony, we're just trying to enhance other flavors. So I wanna show you a bit, if I can, of what the socarrat actually looks like. I like to actually do this using some kind of a sharp spatula. Let's see how well we did with this. I'll use my kitchen towel. It's a little hot. Let's see how we did. Yeah, there's a lot of socarrat. There's a lot of really nice caramelized rice in there. Whoa, look at all that. I don't know how well you can see this, but I'm gonna try to show you as much as I can. So that's the socarrat. That's what really makes a paella, a really good paella. Let's see if I can show you more. Which way do I need to go? Like this. So that's my socarrat. And then I have a lemon wedge in there. You bring the paella to the table and allow people to serve themselves straight from the paella. I want to show this again because of the lemon wedge. So here's my socarrat. There's a lot of it in my paella. That's like the best part, the part that children actually fight for. In fact, children of all ages. So when you serve the paella, you bring it to the table complete, just like we have it here. You don't serve in a dish and bring it over. People serve themselves. It's a very family-friendly dish. So I hope you enjoyed making it. We're gonna move on to do the other dishes for this class, all right? The next dish we're making is tortilla de patatas, also known as tortilla española. So it's this thing from Spain that you could call an omelette, like a potato omelette, but I don't think the Spaniards would like that phrase, that name for their dish is their tortilla española. Don't call it anything else. It really is eggs, onions, potatoes, and salt, and that's it. You can put other things, like you can put parsley, or you can put other spices, but I don't see the point. The point of this dish is its simplicity. I saw yesterday a program on TV about some people in Argentina that are putting cheese inside. To me, that's, I mean, I would have to taste it. I'm not sure. I think that would be overkill. I like the way this dish is simple. I like its versatility. I like the fact that you can make it thin or thick. You can eat it as dinner. You can take it to a picnic. You can eat it for breakfast, although in Spain I don't believe people do that. But it's just a very versatile dish. It's a dish I have had in Spain after coming back from, let's say, an excursion to Toledo. During the day, in the nighttime, we all come back. Somebody peels potatoes, somebody mixes the eggs, we make a tortilla, make a potato tortilla, we eat that with a salad, and that's a light dinner for you. Really easy to make. You need to know a little of the secrets, so let's get going. We're gonna begin by peeling some potatoes, and then we're gonna cut them a specific way, and then we're gonna put them in water so they don't oxidize. So to peel a potato properly, what I like to do is use my thumb and guide my peeler towards me. So this is a very quick and efficient way of doing it. Rather than doing it away for you or anything else, this is actually the way I like. Remove all the little knobby parts of the potato as well. Let's do 2 potatoes today. We're gonna make a small potato tortilla. And we're gonna actually finish it in the oven, which is not traditional, but it's a way to make it that takes a lot of guesswork out, and it always comes out great. It's also a much better way to make a tortilla if you're making a gigantic one. Oftentimes I go and do a Spanish food event and I make a tortilla for, let's say, 20 people. So I just need to make 2 tortillas in large 12-inch non-stick pan, and that's my tortilla. It would be really hard to actually make a tortilla for that many people if I was gonna do it all in a burner. However, making it in a burner is the more traditional way, so in a future video I'll show you how to do that as well. For the tortilla, what we want to do is we want to, first of all, if we peel potatoes right away, we're gonna put them in water so they don't start browning. Then we're gonna actually, when we start cutting them, just dry it a bit so it's not so slippery. Then we're gonna make our first cut on the vertical direction. That, similar to what we did with the onion, will give us a flat base so the potato will not go anywhere. So just go like that in between my hands. Now I'm gonna use, sorry, I just saw some skin in there, I don't want. Now we're gonna do a good cutting technique, which is that our hand is going to move away and the knife is gonna follow. I showed you this earlier in the paella video. So now I'm gonna do that. My hand moves, my knife follows. I'm cutting this into about 1/8 of an inch slices. I grew up in Argentina eating this dish. In Argentina, in general, they make it into cubes. I like making it with slices instead of cubes because this way, when we actually put the egg inside, there's more surface area for the eggs to stick to, and so the potatoes will also stick to each other much more than if they were in a cube. So the structure is going to be better if you make it with slices and not with cubes. Once again, grab the potato like so, cut it in half through the vertical side, use your other hand to guide your knife. Don't worry about the ones that fly away. You pick them up, of course the table is clean. So pick them up now, put them in the water. So what we're gonna do with these ones, we're gonna poach them in oil. Poaching is a technique to cook something in a liquid. In this case, we're using oil for the liquid. The liquid needs to be not too hot. We're gonna actually poach them in oil at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The idea is to cook them really gently. So now they're done. Now I'm gonna actually set up my oil. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna do it in just a pan full of oil, but there's a lot of area for the oil to actually expand. So it's very important that you don't fill up your pan more than half. 2/3 at the most. 2/3 is like we are asking for trouble. So my oil is heating up. Let's begin by cracking all our eggs. We're gonna use 4 eggs. We're gonna be making this in an 8-inch pan. Actually, yeah, it's an 8-inch pan, I believe. I'm gonna go and get it. We're poaching the potatoes in either olive or canola oil. If you use olive oil, I would use not a too expensive one. I would use a cooking quality olive oil. And then we're going to mix some eggs, mix them with salt, and we're gonna also sweat the onions for the tortilla, just like we sweated the onions and the red peppers for the paella. In this case, we don't need so much oil because we're not trying to fry the rice at the end. My oil pan for the potatoes is calling me. It's actually saying something, so I want to see what that is. I'm going to use a thermometer to see at what temperature my oil is at right now. Okay, my oil seems to be a little too hot, so I'm going to just turn it down. It's not too bad, it's around 220 degrees. So now all I'm gonna do, actually let's do that. I'm gonna show you how it works here. I'm gonna keep this up here. So when you first put the potatoes, it should not be boiling too much like if you were making a French fry. You see there's very gentle bubbling going on there. And you see how I'm actually sliding it from the side That way I am gonna make sure that that I'm not splashing anything anywhere. So this one got a little too thick, I'm gonna cut it a little thinner. So you can put all these potatoes there at once and then forget about them for a little while. The goal here is gonna be to actually make them super, super soft. They need to be tender to the fork. And we're not looking to fry them, we're looking to poach them. It's a completely different idea. In fact, I think I have too much fire here going on. So I'm hoping that by the time I'm done putting all the potatoes, they will have cooled down the oil a little bit. Keep going. I'm gonna put all those potatoes. I set my oven at about 300 degrees. A little bit less because my oven runs a little hot. And so that's what I'm gonna do the tortilla at. I just moved to this place and I had not made a tortilla in the oven until a couple of days ago. And I noticed that my oven really was very hot. And my oven was really very hot. So my tortilla burned a little bit. And that means that the oven was too hot. In general, this is a very safe method. Once you know the temperature of your oven, this is an incredibly safe method to actually make sure your tortilla will not burn. So I'm actually going to leave this alone, but I'm going to do it in the opposite burner. The burner I have right next to me. So you don't have to worry about that being too hot. I'm going to just lower the temperature on the other one. I'm going to just put it there, and this is going to take about 10 minutes or so. And then here I have my skillet where I'm going to do my onions for the tortilla. So if you recall, we're going to sweat these onions. We're going to sweat them at low temperature. Just going to put all my onions for the tortilla in there. Immediately I can tell you this oil is too hot, so I'm turning it down. I want this to be a gentle process. So again, if you recall from the paella, you put a little salt for the purpose of sweating. So really low heat. While that is going on, I'm going to wash this bowl so I can reuse it, and we're going to crack the eggs into there. So, again, this dish, I grew up eating it. It's very, very popular in Argentina. I used to take it to picnics. When there was a school picnic or something like that, my mom would prepare one of these ones. It's really great to go to the beach, you know, to like take it anywhere where you need hand food, or finger food rather. So this is going on. While this is going on, you can see how it's really gentle. I'm just simply going to crack some eggs into this bowl. There we go. 4 eggs. Meanwhile, my potatoes are still cooking. I can see gentle heat. Four eggs for this size. Again, this is what, probably 8 inches or so. I'll put the description below the video. Now, this one is too low. So I'm gonna increase it a little bit. I want this to be really nicely cooked. Now all I'm gonna do here is I'm just showing it to you here because the camera is here, not because you wanna do it over the fire. just mixing as well as we can the egg white. I'm not trying to get any heat in there, just trying to mix my eggs. To these eggs, we're gonna put about a teaspoon of kosher salt. So, about a teaspoon of kosher salt. That's done. I'm not trying to heat them up, I'm just doing it here because that's where my camera is. And I want to show it to you. Put the salt away. So I'm just going to keep cooking this until they are fully cooked. Shiny, beautiful, translucent. Once we cook the tortilla per se, we are not going to be cooking anything other than the eggs. So the potatoes and the onions need to be fully cooked. So meanwhile, I am going to check my potato. They're not here with me. I can tell you it's not done. It's not anywhere where it needs to be. I'll bring it back over to where the camera is to show you what they need to do. Like there's a little test that I do that tells me if the potatoes are ready to be put into the tortilla. It's very, very simple. So fix these a little bit. There we go. These ones are almost done. See how they're yellow. They look very soft. To me, they look like they're fully cooked. I'm using a slotty spoon because I want to try to see if I can drain some of that oil when I take them out. I see a couple of ones that are burns over there. I don't want those, so I'm not going to use them. So let's turn off the fire. Let's put them in a little bowl so they cool off a little bit, so they are not going to cook my egg before I want to. So all I'm doing is just removing them. I am actually done with this pan and with this burner as well for the time being. I'm putting them aside. I'm going to let them cool a little bit. And meanwhile, we'll get going on the mushroom dish. I want to tell you this is not necessarily the order I will be doing things. I'm just doing this because I'm shooting these videos. And so I need to do the things more efficient for the video. In general, all of these should be done in a different order. So the mushrooms, the first thing I like to do is I like to cut them. Cut them. Sometimes the stem has a little like dark part in there. I like to remove that. And then after I do that, I like to cut them in half. Like everything we've been doing, just cut them in half. So now there's a flat side. And this flat side will cook in contact with the oil for the most part. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute when we get ready to doing it. Okay, so we're gonna just cut all the mushrooms and then we're gonna wash them. Again, we don't wash them an hour in advance, just before we're ready to use them. We're gonna do all our mise en place for this as well. We already have the garlic. We wanna have the lemon ready to be squeezed. We also want to have the parsley already cut up. And we're serving this with bread, so we wanna have the bread sliced as well. All right, so all of this is already ready to be washed. I'm gonna put it back here. We're gonna wash it just before we use them. Now my garlic again is ready. My parsley needs to be chopped. We're very close to using it, so I'm just simply gonna remove the stems. My potatoes need more fire, I can tell. You see, I'm constantly moving in the kitchen, looking at what's going on with my other things. That way, I don't burn things. I mean, I do, but rarely. And nobody's perfect. So the point is that we are constantly paying attention to everything. We cook with all our senses. Our smell, sense of smell, our sense of taste, of course. Touch, because we are touching to see how things feel or if they're hot. Also, of course, sound. Sound is very important. Sound can tell us a lot about what's going on in the kitchen. And this sounds trite, but the truth is true. It's like our heart is super important as well. I know that when my heart is not in it, the food does not turn out as well. So I just paid attention. I saw that my potatoes, the fire had gone off, so I had to put it back on. Okay, so now we're going to do the rotting motion for the parsley. Let's see if I can see this with this other camera. Okay, so here we go. Just keep going until it's very fine. Just keep it going. It needs to be very fine. I don't want a big piece of parsley in my mouth. I want this just to be a sensation, a taste, not something that overwhelms me with this herbaceousness. So that's that. Next, you guessed it, we're gonna clean. Then we're gonna prepare the lemon juice. And the bread, I wanna slice the bread so when I'm ready to serve it, I have it. My potatoes are going too high now again. I'm having a hard time adjusting that. We are done also. So I'm gonna bring over one, put it on a dish. We're going to mash it and see how soft it is. It's super soft, so that's what I want. But I'm going to look for one that is a little thicker. If my thickest ones are done, everything is done. Yeah, it's done. So I'm turning off the fire for the potatoes. I'm going to bring them over here so you can see what I'm doing. So that's my potatoes in the oil. I'm going to use again a slotted spoon. I'm going to put them in a bowl. So I'm just going to remove them. And then I'll just remove them, trying to remove as much of the oil as possible. And I want to let them cool down a little bit, because we're going to mix them with the egg. Once we mix it with the egg, we don't want the egg to cook immediately from the heat of the potatoes. So we let it cool down a bit. All right. After I'm done with this, we're going to proceed quite quickly with the rest of the meal. So actually, this is taking quite a while because I'm doing all this explanation and I'm not doing everything in order, the order that I will be doing it. More than likely, what I have is I have the potato tortilla ready to eat when my guests arrive. It's a really nice appetizer, if you will. So I like to have that ready so people are not going hungry. The second thing I do is give them the mushroom dish while I'm finishing cooking the paella. Okay, so we're gonna let this cool down a bit. Now we're gonna wash the mushrooms. So for this dish, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be browning the mushrooms really deeply. So what we wanna do is we wanna make sure that there's quite a bit of oil in there. The mushrooms will absorb a lot of it. They are like a sponge. And so we wanna have a lot of oil to make sure that there is some left over when we're done with the dish that mixes with the lemon juice. So we're gonna go at high heat. The mushrooms have already been washed. We're gonna wait for the pan to get really, really hot. We are not going to salt. The reason is that we're going to be browning these mushrooms really deeply, and if we put salt, they're gonna start exuding their water from inside right away, and then they are gonna like steam in their own juice before they have a chance to actually brown. So for this reason, we don't put salt. We're gonna salt it at the very end once the mushrooms are deeply, deeply browned. So let's see if this is already hot. Let's try it with one. We're just gonna put them face side down. It's not hot enough. I want more bubbling going on than what we can see in here. I wanna make sure that all my right back. Now we can see how there's more bubbling going on. We're gonna put the mushrooms face side down. This way we have more of a surface that is gonna be touching the pan at all times. I wanna start it in their more optimal cooking condition. If I put them like this, there's gonna be a round part in here. So the mushroom is not gonna touch the pan, only in one point. I want to actually do this really deeply at the beginning. So we're gonna just risk a little bit. If we are confident, like what I just did is not good. You don't wanna drop them from up here. That's actually more dangerous than putting them straight right next to the pan. So again, be careful with this, but don't be too concerned. If you grab it properly, if you grab your mushroom properly, you will not get hurt by the oil. You have more of a chance of getting hurt by the oil if you are afraid of it and you drop it from too high. So that one I kind of messed up almost, but I can still put it in. One of the important things here is to not crowd your pan too much. If you crowd your pan, the mushrooms are gonna steam themselves instead of browning, because they're gonna start releasing water into each other. So even though we didn't put salt, you see all this vapor coming out. That's water that's still evaporating. We want to evaporate quickly. That's why we want this to be really hot. And if we put salt, they're gonna evaporate. Instead of evaporating, they're gonna exude the water. The water is gonna start circulating around the pan, and then they will not have a chance to brown until all that water is gone. So this is a better way to do it without the salt and without crowding them too much. So I think that's enough. I'm gonna push them apart. You will see in a few minutes these mushrooms will actually get smaller because there is water that's evaporating, but it's not really staying in the pan. That's what we want. As soon as I have a little more space, I will put some more. I'm gonna check to see my cameras are working. They seem to be. So let's put a few more. Let's put a few more. If one of them falls like that one just did, it doesn't really matter. We really don't want the stem so much. So that one actually I am going to remove. So it's only one little one left. Now what we have to do, we have to wait until the mushrooms are brown. They are not even close to being brown there. Of course, we put them slightly at different times as we were putting them one by one. So all of them are slightly different in cooking terms, but it's not really that fundamental that they are cooked at the same time, at the same rate. In the end, all we want is for them to turn like this one. You see how this one is?
really brown, really nice. That one is not, maybe getting close to there. Now we just play around with them. We make them cook. Like that one is beautiful. So is that one. The ones in the periphery may not be so good. So now what we can do, it's pretty obvious from what we're seeing here in the pan, is that the periphery has less heat than the inside. So we're gonna use a spoon to move them around. So if you look at all of these ones in the middle, they are more done than the ones in the middle, in the sides, I mean to say, I'm sorry. So now I'm just gonna play with my spatula and just try to push some of these to the sides, and the ones that were in the sides to the center, where it's obviously hotter. No matter how good your burners are, there's always hot spots. The hot spots are always in the middle. You see how the pan was almost full before. Now there's all this water that evaporated. I want to see if this camera is working. Yeah, you're working. Hello. So we want to make sure that everything is cooking. So they are not completely there yet. So this one is done. I don't have to be too careful with this. No matter what we do with them, they're going to be delicious. I do want them to be a little browner than this. So these ones that are not brown, I'm going to leave them there a little longer. And I'm going to protect these ones by pushing them to the side a little bit. Okay, so here we go again. This dish is so simple, so delicious. When I started making it, I didn't believe it could be so simple. So I started adding like a Frenchified version of it, in which I put red wine and butter. That is delicious also, but this dish, just by itself, doesn't need anything, any of that, for it to be really, really good. Maybe in a future video, I will make the setas al ajillo crossing the Pyrenees, going to France, and putting some butter and some red wine. But today we're going to make it in the pure Spanish way, the setas al ajillo. So you can see some of them are getting really nicely browned. We're going to wait a little for all of them to be with this nice, like, mahogany color, kind of. So here, we're almost there with all of them. Yeah, they're looking really, really good. So now, well, this one needs a little more time. So that's this one, I believe. These ones are all done. So now I want to just wait until this one is done. Now we want to cook the other side. So I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to move them around a bit. So actually, this is one way to do it. Another way is to just shake your pan. If you have a nice pan that has round edges like that, you can just shake the pan, and as they touch the border, they naturally flip like it's happening here. They are done, essentially. Let's just cook them on the second side a little longer before we do anything else. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to turn off the heat. So what we're going to do next is we're going to turn off the heat. We're going to add the garlic. And the garlic I want to do off heat because I don't want the garlic to burn. But I still want the garlic to release a lot of its flavor. Remember, this is very hot oil. If we keep it with the fire on or with your heat on, then the garlic more than likely is going to burn. All we want to do is have the garlic release some of its beautiful garlic flavor, infuse the oil, and then when we put the lemon juice, the oil is going to be infused with oil. No, the oil is going to be infused with garlic taste, and it's going to create this wonderful flavor. So now lemon juice. So we're going to squeeze one lemon into here. Half a lemon to begin with, then we'll mix it all around and we'll see how it tastes. I can't get tired of saying what Massimo Bottura says, that this is the most important instrument in your kitchen, your taste buds, because you always need to taste what you're making. So now we're gonna put the parsley and finally some salt, and then we're gonna shake it all around. And that, folks, that's this dish, you know. So you see how the mushrooms have reduced in size. So the way I like to serve this, let's just get rid of this burner for now so I can show you here. I like to serve them essentially in a platter like this. Let's see, that's my camera. In a platter, all this juice. Ah, you know what? I didn't taste it. I need to taste it before I serve it. So now we're tasting it. Doesn't need anything, it's delicious. So this can go to the wash. Let's accommodate this a little bit better. And I like to serve this dish with little pieces of bread all around. Sometimes I've done this. People have used the bread to eat their mushrooms. That was not my idea, but I tasted it. It's delicious also. The idea is more to use the bread to mop up this wonderful juice that was created there. This distillation, or this liquid from the mushrooms with the lemon juice, the salt, the garlic, the parsley, and finally the olive oil. That's really delicious. It's like really an incredibly simple, easy dish to make. Put some forks, one for everybody, or toothpicks if you have nice toothpicks. And there you have it, setas al ajillo.
Okay, so tortilla. We have those potatoes that we cooked a while ago. They are right here. We don't need this anymore. We have the eggs that I ended up putting in the fridge because I had an interruption due to camera problems. So the eggs are really cold now. The potatoes are also perfectly cold. So are the onions. So actually I need a bigger bowl than this one to mix the potatoes in. Let's actually, I'm gonna mix the potatoes here, but I need a bigger bowl. So I'm just gonna put the potatoes in a smaller bowl. I'm gonna serve this bigger one for the mixing. So my eggs are well mixed. We put some salt a while ago. Now we're gonna put our cooked sweated onions in there. Really sweet because we really change the flavor by our sweating process. Just move my bowl towards the camera so you can see it better. Now we don't want to use anything that is too hard, so we're going to use a rubber spatula to mix the potatoes in. I'm not going to use the spoon. I want to try to preserve as much as I can the shape of the potatoes intact. I'm looking for my kitchen towel. So here we are. So here we are with the eggs. We have here 4 eggs, about a teaspoon of salt, kosher salt, about 1 small onion that has been sweated, and the potatoes. And so now I want to do the folding motion. This is the motion that they do when they do baking. you know, when they want to protect something like something delicate like a meringue or eggs, you know, like egg whites that have been fluffed up or whipped up, I should say. So we don't really want to break the potatoes. I want to save the spatula because I'm going to need it now. I'm going to bring my trusty burner here. Let's see if we are under the camera where we need to be. So I'm going to show you the easiest way that you can really do this at home really easily. We're going to start it here on the stove. We're going to finish it in the oven, and you will see in the oven, it will give us this really delicate, beautiful crust. Maybe not delicate, just a beautiful golden crust if we do everything right. Sometimes it doesn't work. Last time, it was the first time I was cooking my tortilla in my new oven, and so it was a little bit overdone. Still delicious, but not as good as I want it to be for these cooking classes. So I'm doing it again. Anyways, a little bit of olive oil, just a little bit. Make sure that if some of the shine, some of the non-stickiness wore off from the non-stick nature of my pan, so that I can restore some of that. I want to wait until this is really, really hot, because I want the crust to form right away. So if the crust forms right away, likely my potato will not stick to it when I try to unmold it. So we will wait until this is really hot. I'm putting it at the maximum heat. I want this to actually be smoking. So it's the first time I actually am using these burners for doing this. There's a thing, I like these burners better than a flat burner. I usually work with induction burners that are very flat in the bottom. They are very efficient, but they are not the best thing to do for this, because here we want the fire to actually surround the thing so it heats up the whole thing. On a flat burner, only the bottom gets heated up and the sides get heated up very little. And so for something like this, we want to cook fully on the sides as well. Gas burner is actually better than a flat induction burner, or for sure much better than an electric burner. Those things, I don't know who invented them. I don't use them ever. If I have to use them, I do, but they're a pain in the neck to work with. Anyways, I can feel the heat coming from here. So I'm gonna be ready with my spatula. I'm gonna just pour this in there, and I wanna hear my egg cooking right away. You can see there's a crust already starting to form in the bottom. So I'm just spreading the potatoes around so they will be flat when I invert this tortilla. Now this is going to my 300 or so degree oven right away. I'm gonna put it there, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
So the tortilla was in the oven for about 15 minutes at 300 degrees. At that point, all we were doing was cooking the egg, because the onions and the potatoes were already cooked, as you may recall. So we also let it rest for about 20 minutes after it came out of the oven. So the eggs have had a chance to coagulate, cool down, and now it's time for us to unmold it. So I am in the right place right now. So I have a dish that is slightly larger than my non-stick pan, and I have a spatula with which I'm going to push the tortilla around to make sure it's loose. It is really loose. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to shake it a little bit to make sure it's completely loose. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the handle with my dominant hand, and I'm going to put a plate that is slightly larger than my non-stick skillet. I'm going to use my non-dominant hand, and I'm going to turn the tortilla using my dominant hand with a very quick movement, and my plate is going to move as well really quickly. So here we go. I want to make sure that we're recording this in quick time as well, and that we're in the right place. And so here we go. 1, 2, 3. So there's our tortilla made in the oven. So when we make it in the oven like this, it's really a beautiful dish. So I want to put it a little more in the center so we can all see it well. It's nice and golden and beautiful. And now I'm gonna cut it for you to see what it looks like in the. So you can serve this dish as a small appetizer or as a larger portion in a larger dish, accompanied, for example, by a salad. That would be a dinner, a light dinner. After coming back from an excursion in some other, like a neighboring city, like I've been adopted, so sort of adoptive Spanish family. This is a family that I've known for a long time, and we consider each other as to be relatives. We consider each other to be very, very close. I've been to their house in Spain many, many times, and on occasion we would go to visit, I don't know, Toledo, the city neighboring, and then come back in the evening. Dorita would make a tortilla. We would have a salad to go with it, and that would be our dinner. So you can also serve it as an appetizer. If you see, this one is very thick. In Spain, very often they will make it much thinner, and then you'd have to eat it with a plate. But this one is a finger food, and you can see how beautiful the layering of the potatoes is. So this one is really ready to eat. You can serve it as an appetizer in a small dish, like this. Let's see if we can see it. Or you can serve a larger portion on a larger dish, and you accompany this by, let's say, a salad, as I mentioned. So there you have it. That's a tortilla de patatas, tortilla española, or tortilla de papas. We're making a salad that's very appropriate for a summer night, for example, eating a paella. Paella is a very strong flavor dish, and so you don't want to serve a dainty little salad with gem lettuce from the farmer's market. You want something that can stand up to the paella. So we're making this salad. We mentioned before how we're putting onions that are raw but that have been macerated in orange juice for all this time that we were making the rest of the dishes. So we're going to begin by putting in the orange. So for the orange, what we want to do, we want to cut off this one first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the skin, teeth, which is this really, I want to cut off the pith, which is the white part of the skin that's actually bitter, so we don't want it in our food. When we serve this salad, we want to make sure that people have a good mouthfeel as well, and so we don't want either anything that's really hard, so we're removing all these white pieces because they're bitter, and then we're going to remove the core as well. So we're going to remove a bit more of this part because that's hard. The rest all goes into composting, so nothing is wasted. Then I'm going to just quarter this through the center, and I'm going to just remove this center piece, and I'm going to cut the rest into bite-sized pieces. Bite-sized pieces means something that we can fit in a spoon with a couple of other ingredients. So we're going to remove these two. That goes into composting. Turn off the camera here. That goes into my salad bowl here. And this one too. Then I'm going to do the whole other orange. All this goes there. So if you're going to start an orange from scratch, what you're going to do is cut off both sides. The caps, I refer to that as the caps of the orange. Now I have a firm, solid, flat base. Now my knife is going to follow the shape of the orange. So I start vertically, or rather, let's see, I start horizontally, then I go vertical, then I follow all the way to the bottom. If I don't get the whole thing all in one swoop pass, then I'm going to turn it around and then do the other side, as I'm going to show you right now. So now I turn it on the other side and then just keep going, or I can do this in my hand like so. So if I want to be really fancy, actually, what I want to do, I want to remove all the membranes as well. So for that is a technique called Supreme. Takes a little while to get used to it, and I think a lot of people show a very complicated way on TV. I'm going to show you an easier way. All you need to do is figure out the angle of your membrane, and so my knife will follow that angle, and then I turn it around to the opposite side. That just falls down into my board. Then I do the other side, and I keep going until I've done all of the pieces of orange. So if you see, this has no membrane, it's just only the fleshy part of the orange. And if I find a piece like this, I just go ahead and remove it also. So people get really afraid of this technique. There's nothing to be afraid of. Your knife is not going to hurt you because it's going kind of like very slowly. You're going in a slicing motion like this. You need to take your time. And then just like this. Again, I'm just following the angle of my membranes. So my knife points in the angle on the side of the side facing away from me. Now it's gonna point in the side facing towards me. See a little piece there I don't like. I'm removing it. And I just keep going until I'm done with the whole orange. So of course I'm doing it pretty slowly now because I want to show you and I don't want to hurt myself. But if you have a lot of these things to do, you can actually accelerate it a little bit. It's not that difficult and not that dangerous. It just gets easier the more you do it. So now I have these pieces. I can go ahead and just put all of this like this in the bottom of my salad bowl. The rest, I think I'm going to squeeze some of this orange juice in here so I have a little more. Next thing, of course, as always, we're going to clean a little bit. Clean the knife as well. Then we're going to cut the tomatoes. Here I have nice cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes, bite-sized pieces. Sharp knife helps cut them nicely without crushing them. And again, notice my slicing motion is not an up and down motion. If I do that, I'll never break through the skin. Or if I do, I'm going to probably squeeze all the juice out of the tomato. So, some tomatoes. Again, bite-sized pieces. These are supposed to fit in a spoonful with a few other ingredients. So here are my tomatoes. Now I want to clean. Let's work on the almonds. Actually, yeah, let's work on the almonds. Just cut them in, again, bite-sized pieces, maybe thirds, maybe halves. The almonds are there to provide a nice contrasting texture. It's a crunchy element. If you want to go really fancy, you can toast them in the oven for a few seconds before you actually do them, before you actually cut them and put them in the salad. That usually works well. It adds another element of flavor. So here we go with all our almonds. Finally, in terms of complicated cutting, we have an avocado. To do an avocado, you want to do what we did with the onions and with the potatoes. Just hold it like this and then just rotate it so your knife can just cut it by itself. Then you open it. It's a beautiful avocado. I'm going to just score it inside of the skin. And then on the opposite direction. Then let's remove the pith. We'll just go like this and just pull it out. Notice I pulled out away. No way for me to hurt myself that way. So again, we're going to just score it. And then score it in the opposite direction. And then with the aid of a spoon, we are going to remove the skin and put it straight into the salad. So here's the bowl. We're putting it straight into the salad bowl. Very soon we're going to add the orange juice, so we have to worry too much about this thing browning, because immediately it's going to get sprinkled with orange juice. Remember when we actually began cutting, we put the onions in orange juice. We mentioned that was going to be the dressing for a salad. So here's the same thing. I think this avocado is not 100% ripe. It might actually be just excellent, so we'll see. Let's try one. It's actually absolutely perfect. Not too soft, not too hard. So all of it, the rest goes to composting. Clean hands. Olives, you want to again cut them into bite-sized pieces, and you want to be careful with how much olives you put. A lot of people don't like them. I do a lot of these classes. I mean, before the pandemic, you know, we are in the middle of a pandemic right now. We were doing these classes in person, not online, and a lot of people ended up taking the olives out of their salads. Unbeknownst to me, a lot of people don't like olives. So if you have people who don't like olives, you may want to experiment with putting capers, also an ingredient that comes from that area of the world. So I think I mentioned earlier that I like this salad to serve with a paella because it's all Mediterranean flavors. Let's cut this avocado a little better. Including the avocado, which doesn't come from the Mediterranean, but is grown in a Mediterranean-like climate, so it's perfectly adequate. So I don't want to mix this salad too many times, so I'm going to put some salt right now. I'm going to put the orange juice where the onion was macerating, and that's going to be the acid for my salad. Then I'm going to actually mix it with olive oil. Nice Spanish olive oil in this case. And finally, I'm going to judge how many of these onions I want to use. How much of the other ingredients I have. So depending on how much of the other ingredients I have, I will decide if I want to put more or less onions. And that's it. So you would enjoy this together with paella if you want to, or have the paella first and then have the salad, or serve the salad as if it was simply another appetizer.